I felt like I wanted to crawl away and hide and never face the world again. I felt so humiliated by the experience of being rejected and being left for a woman 20 years younger in my year of menopause. And it's bizarre because a reclamation for me was about just being completely honest about how I was feeling. The statistics are alarming. 45 to 55-year-old women are the most likely worldwide to either commit suicide and or leave a relationship or divorce. And realize that it's a time of deep, deep spiritual power. That spiritual power is so much bigger than our physical bodies. You know, we are not reduced to our physical symptoms or our physical bodies in the way that Western medicine might like us to believe, and the media might like us to believe. Our spiritual power is so immense that patriarchy does attempt to shut it down because, let's face it, we are uncontrollable if we know our own power.
Beautiful soul, welcome back to the Abundance Club podcast. There is a good reason why you clicked on this episode. I trust that your soul has brought you here. And boy, I am so excited for you to receive this conversation because today I am joined by the phenomenal Lisa Fitzpatrick. She is a physiotherapist, a pelvic floor and sexual health educator, writer, and keynote speaker. And Lisa spent her career helping women understand their bodies, but it wasn't until her own world fell apart right in the middle of her own menopause journey that everything she thought she knew got cracked wide open. I had so many goosebump moments and this conversation just felt so resonant. It goes so much deeper than symptoms and hormones. We talk about worth, sovereignty, sensuality, and what it actually means to reclaim your power in midlife, not despite what you're going through, but actually because of it. Lisa has written a new book called Sexy Menopause, The Science and Soul of Midlife Desire, and it is available now for pre-order. And honestly, after this conversation, I think you're going to want to grab a copy for yourself. So my friends, let's take a breath, get comfortable, and dive into this beautiful conversation with the gorgeous Lisa Fitzpatrick. Lisa, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to the Abundance Club.
Thank you for having me, Amy. So lovely to be here.
We've connected before. We've had some history. We've worked together before, and it's great kind of meeting you now in where you're at and also where I'm at. But what I love about you and why I'm really excited about this conversation, you've taught anatomy and the yoga teacher training that I've run before, and you just have so much beautiful inherent wisdom and a really progressive approach in terms of how you see things and view the body and the different transitions and transformations that we go through. So I'm really excited to meet you where you are right now. You have this background of obviously being a physiotherapist and have become really passionate about advocating for women's sexual health and menopause. So to begin with, I guess I'm curious, was there a moment when you realized that this conversation was so much more than just about hormones and symptoms, and it was really about women's relationships with themselves, with their body, and really with who they're becoming? And what did that look like for you? Like, what did that awakening look like? And what is this conversation that we're not having enough when it comes to this transformative portal that is menopause that we all go through as women?
Yeah, great question. It started with me being on the floor, sobbing my heart out, completely heartbroken, with the news that my fiance and partner of 9 years had decided that he was in love with me, but not in love with me anymore, and he was leaving me. And it was about 3 months in for me without a cycle. So I was 51 and I was, just about sort of like facing that menopausal year where we hopefully clock 12 months, 13 months without a cycle. And I was thinking, yeah, this has been quite harrowing for me, this menopausal shift, in that I've been feeling overweight, I've been feeling frumpy, I've been feeling unsexy, I've been feeling all of the things that women, I guess, face, and not knowing how to manage them. And it was ironic and humiliating in a way, because I was also a feminine empowerment coach and so into my women's physiology. And so, but those answers weren't giving me solutions anymore. Previous answers weren't giving me solutions. So in that heartache, I then discovered that my partner was deciding to be with someone 20 years younger. So I realized at that point that I'd been really relying on the relationship itself to define my worth. And I'd been relying on a lot of things to define my worth. And I remember just being on the floor thinking, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. This is the worst pain a female can feel at this age and stage of life. Like, oh my God, you've just been discarded for a younger woman. This is what you hear about your whole life. And then I thought, if I can survive this and work my way through it, maybe I will come out with something helpful and holy. Maybe I will, but I don't know how I'll survive it first. Now, it took a lot of self reflection to realize that I'd outsourced my worth a lot to the outside world, to the patriarchy, even though I was very much in a lot of questioning about the patriarchy my whole life, with my sort of female physiology work and understanding. I really realized how much I was hinging my own self-worth on outside factors. And I guess that journey to the center of who I am and my relationship in relationship to the divine, to God, to that very benevolent source that loves me no matter what and that would never reject me, I realized I'd outsourced a lot of my power and my sense of agency and sovereignty to things that actually weren't really important at the end of the day. And it's interesting, Amy, because it was under that sort of healing journey that the sense of innate worth and also a really deep sense of eroticism kind of started to surface. Because being on the floor like that, I thought, I'm never going to have sex again. How can I go out dating at this age? Women at this age are just done. Like, it's done for me. That part of my life's over. And I was quite devastated by that, because I see patients in my clinic, 40 patients a week, and we talk about pelvic health and sexual health all the time. And I'm spruiking how important sex is for pelvic health and how important it is as a measure of well-being. And here I am thinking, I'm never going to have sex again. And it was such an irony. It was like, oh, we learn what we need to learn. We teach what we need to learn. That's always been my life, is teaching what I need to learn.
Yeah.
And so to find my way back to Sexy Menopause, hence the book.
Yes, show us. Oh my gosh, beautiful.
It's an irony. It's an irony. It didn't come from me feeling sexy one bit.
Oh my gosh, Lisa. I mean, I'm just like, as you were speaking, it has so many goosebumps over me. Like, I relate so much. Obviously, we have our Earth School curriculum of what we go through. And yes, what we sign up for, it's like you were initiated by fire. It's like, you want to teach this?
Yeah.
Sure, first, you've got to walk through it and embody it and come out. And like, such leadership, right? Like, such soul leadership to go through that. And the thing that I related to so much in what you said, which just feels like it's such a conversation that's needed to have because it's so prevalent, is this relationship to our worth and the way that we outsource our worth, tie our worth to something or someone that's outside of us, that's separate from us. Our agency, our sovereignty. And what's so interesting is that you have been teaching on all of this. Like I've been teaching because I recognized, and
Yeah.
those who have listened to my podcast would know, like I recognized the way that I'd been outsourcing my worth to my business and being a
Yes.
business owner and all of that. So
Yes.
there's these huge identity shifts that are
Mm.
occurring. And I'm in that midpoint, that 44 kind of midpoint, starting to have the perimenopause. So this, for so many people, they believe that menopause is just this crisis, right? Like this
Yes.
losing of ourselves. And there's a real grief involved in that. And
Yes.
it feels like for you, and I want to get into this book that you've written, Sexy
Yes.
Menopause, because we don't often hear those two words next to each other. So it
Yeah.
seems quite radical.
Mm.
I'd love to know then, what is this deeper invitation that you
Yes.
feel like those who
Mm.
pick up this book are
Mm.
going to receive by
Mm.
embracing this portal as a real opportunity and an invitation rather than a sentence like it's
Mm.
portrayed so much.
Mm.
And we've taken that on in our conditioning, that this is
Yes.
something we just want to skip over, get done.
Yes.
What's the opportunity here? What's the real invitation here?
Yeah, look, the invitation is so overwhelmingly positive that, and somehow the cultural narratives are so negative and so focused on the terrible symptomatology and the hot flushes and the weight gain and the things that I've already sort of mentioned about self-worth. However, the invitation for women is to question those narratives and to also understand that as an initiation, it's a 10-year journey. So it's actually a season of your life, which does go for a long time, but it is possible for that season of life to be an incredibly positive way of eliminating things in your life and being that are not authentic to your life path and to your particular journey. So it requires of us a medicine of subtraction. So that does require a lot of grief. We have to let go of things that we might have hung our hats on, our ambitions, our drive, some of our drivers are very much starting to dwindle a little bit with the frenetic pace that estrogen allows us to work at. But as that tapers itself down, which is meant to be a very gentle process, but in modern society, because women are so cortisol sort of driven and stressed a lot of the time, sometimes estrogen has a bit more of an unfinished symphony that's going out of tune quite terribly instead of this lovely, graceful winding down. And so the opportunity is for us to get very real with ourselves about what it means to live our one precious human life authentically and to not actually be at the mercy of our hearts of service, because so many women are in these service-based positions where they've looked after children their whole lives, they've looked after partners their whole lives, they've stood by situations that might have been incredibly chaotic. And it's almost like we have to say that actually the symptoms are messengers. So they're very positive things. Western medicine's very good at pathologizing pretty much everything we go through, when a lot of what we go through is a very natural response to a very, very unhealthy framework. So, to give you an example, if we have been immersed in a really unsafe relationship, an unsafe society, our pelvic physiology and our hormonal systems will actually start to beg for attention. Those symptoms are often not just menopause or perimenopause. We're very quick to write them off as that. But really, they're the body's intelligent signals to say, look, your relationship's unsafe, or the role that you're playing right now is very, very stressful and it's not good for your nervous system and your hormonal systems. And I think women in particular, we shoulder a lot of the blame. We think, oh my gosh, I'm broken and dysfunctional. We're not seeing, anything outside of the lens of I'm taking full responsibility for all of these things. But on a societal and cultural level, We're then being sold products that are marked up by $50 a product because they're for menopause. Meno washing, the new meno washing. The vulnerability of a woman feeling so humiliated by her aging process that she is on the floor crying because she thinks that I'm going to have to basically, accept that I'm past my use by date.
Yeah.
I mean, how cruel is that we do that to women? And so, I mean, as scary as it is for me, because I'm not necessarily the world's most confident person, I think where I felt I got very bolstered by my mission was in the recovery process. I was able to see my patients who were in their 60s and 70s having the best lives, living their best lives. So the statistics are alarming. 45 to 55-year-old women are the most likely worldwide to either commit suicide and or leave a relationship or divorce. Yeah? How terrifying is that? So this is a very vulnerable decade. But then the women in their 60s and 70s are statistically worldwide more likely to be the happiest, most fulfilled they've ever been. So that's really saying something, right? As a path of initiation, if we can see that, yes, the symptoms are intense. Yes, it's a very discombobulating time. It's still a time that we can get through if we know that on the other side of the storm, there's this amazing grace that starts to appear. And that's a very spiritual thing. So women who have embraced that change in themselves and realized that it's a time of deep, deep spiritual power, that spiritual power is so much bigger than our physical bodies. We are not reduced to our physical symptoms or our physical bodies in the way that Western medicine might like us to believe, and the media might like us to believe. Our spiritual power is so immense that patriarchy does attempt to shut it down because, let's face it, we are uncontrollable if we know our own power. Yeah. So I get a little bit political in my, I guess, in my stance on that.
Absolutely. And it's also connected. And it's interesting because I have a lot of women that will come and meet me in that midlife arena. And it almost feels like, and it feels like that for me, is that like we spent so much of our 20s exploring and, so much of our 30s in the upper, for those that chose to have children, bringing up children and pursuing careers. And then, you start to meet the 40s and all of a sudden your children are maybe a little bit more independent and you have this space to
Yes.
go, to look within, like to come
Yes.
home and go, hang on, what about me? And I think a lot of people think that they get robbed a little bit of that
Yes.
time because
Yes.
they're fighting these symptoms and start to meet
Yes.
the night sweats and they feel like, I don't know who I am.
Yes.
So can you speak about that really
Mm,
big identity shift that comes
mm,
with that? And it might even be
yes.
in that period where people are
Mm,
becoming empty nesters or
yes.
but it's also, I think there's statistics around it also is that it's the time women in their late 40s and 50s
Mm,
when they can actually make the most money and have the most success
mm,
in business.
yes.
And so
Yes.
for someone that's really on
Mm,
this precipice of feeling like I don't know
mm,
who I am anymore, my body
mm,
is screaming at me,
mm,
lean into this invitation.
mm.
But we're brought up in this society where we're taught to be disconnected from our bodies. How do we start to repair that relationship, not just to our bodies, but to spirit, to source, to our purpose? How do we begin to cultivate that?
Yes. It does begin with the importance of finding, no matter what it takes, small periods of time where we're sitting in silence with our own souls. So the world's incredibly good at distracting us and creating a lot of noise, but the small, still voice of wisdom that does actually know the way forward, it won't know the way forward 10 years from now. It will only know the way forward from this point right here, right now. And for women whose intuition has been shut down their whole lives, it can actually be very scary to sit with the small, still voice, because for some of us, we'll realize that that voice might have been telling us to leave a relationship for years or to not tolerate a particular situation. But the fear around not being able to provide for our families might have been there. The fear around what others might think might have been there. We might not have even been really aware of those things. They might have been subconscious. But in this day of reckoning, or these seasons of reckoning, we absolutely we can't deny it anymore. And the more we go into denial, I guess, about what our deeper inner truth is inside that silence. So sitting even just for 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day can be quite seismic in its impact on our ability to listen and tune into that small, still voice, which is constantly speaking to us, in the form of a very gentle, benevolent nudge. It's never going to shout at us. I think that's one thing I want to just make clear. The voice of God never shouts at us. It never urges us with a feeling of, oh my gosh, this is a really urgent situation. It's actually incredibly gentle and kind and nourishing. So all of those negative voices that society sort of bestow upon a woman's psyche, they are very much distractions from the truth. So yeah, I think I'm really passionate in my book about dismantling lies, because lies are a bit of a machine that run a lot of society, and we're not really taught to question those lies enough. But menopause is fabulous for the truth-telling side of it.
And what is it with that? I mean,
Yeah,
is there any kind of physiology behind this in
yeah.
terms of why all of a
Mm.
sudden we become less tolerant of shit
Yes,
that we would have
yes.
tolerated before? We feel like we want to
Yes.
set some more boundaries. There's less of the
Mm,
people-pleasing tendencies. It's like we
mm,
get to this point where we're
mm.
like, the self-abandoning needs to stop.
Stop,
I
yes.
can't do that anymore. And do you see a
Mm.
correlation for the people that do decide to stay close to themselves, even though there's fear speaking in the lies, do decide to listen and pursue that more soul-led life?
Yes, yes.
And do you find that correlation between that and then
Mm.
symptoms going down?
Yes and no. So I think we again have this I have an allopathic approach and always have. I've always had one ski in each camp,
Mm,
one ski in Western medicine, one ski is in, the complementary allopathic supports. Estrogen, which comes from a Latin word, estros, which means gadfly, which means frenzy. It allows us to pat ourselves and be really able to have this energy towards service. As it winds down, we become less tolerant because we don't have that insulation from estrogen as much.
mm,
Yes, we can go on hormone replacements, and that's a thing, or we can go for phytoestrogen approaches, which is more of a plant medicine estrogen support. No, it's not going to completely safeguard us against the fact that our bodies are changing, and that's a very natural process.
mm,
It will give us a little bit of insulation, but it won't be the whole picture, because the whole picture is one that is very multifactorial and includes our spiritual life, our mental and emotional sort of well-being. And I guess with that, um, the very real denial of that, there's this thing of, oh, I better try and minimize my symptoms so that I don't have to deal with what's actually
mm.
happening underneath those symptoms,
Yeah, yeah.
is really, another aspect. But yeah, look, the women that go through, there are about 10% of the population that will go through menopause with absolutely no symptoms. They have some genetic blessing
Mm,
that stops the process from affecting them physically. And there are then the rest of us on a spectrum where certain things have more weight than others. So some women are going to go through more physical symptoms than others, and other women are going to go through more of the mental, emotional symptoms. And I believe, from what I can see in my clinic, most of this does boil down to what our window of tolerance is like. So, when we're in a window of tolerance that's very generous, it means that our nervous system and our hormonal range is really generous. So, we've learnt to sit with the truth of life. We've learnt to be fairly calm and steady in the storms of life. We've sailed that. There's a degree of mastery. And that's actually what is meant to happen, is that when estrogen winds up, we've learned enough, we're wise enough to know I don't put my energy over there because it doesn't actually give me any satisfaction or fulfillment. So we're meant to become more discerning and be able to say, I'm choosing where I say yes and where I say no a lot more often. And because my estrogen's lower, I'm also much better at coming and accessing a no without feeling guilty. So, I think that's the gift. That's where the positives are, right? This is this positive side to it that people don't talk about nearly enough, that there's this incredibly liberating fabulousness about owning fully
Owning your
what
power
your
and just,
is.
yeah, not giving as many, right? Not giving as many of the F's, and just like
Yeah.
something so incredibly liberating and
Yeah.
empowering about that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
What did it look like for you, Lisa, coming
Mm,
through that rock bottom
mm,
moment? And,
mm,
I love the phase second spring. Like,
mm.
what did it look like for you when you went through that kind of dark night of the soul? And
Yeah.
what really helped you to resurface and
Mm,
ultimately, from what I can see,
mm,
probably step into your greatest power?
mm,
Can you
mm.
look back and see that as a gift yet?
I can. Yeah, look, I'm surprised more than probably anyone that I have recovered to a level that I now realize is post-traumatic growth
Mm,
factor. It's where we have a trauma, which to me, that trauma was a seismic trauma that took me deep into the depths of, pain and suffering. And I almost didn't make it. I will say that I almost didn't make it back. But in coming back, well, first of all, I took a fabulous long service leave break, which I know is a very privileged white woman thing to say. But I did a backpacking trip through Southeast Asia and went to Laos. And I prayed and prayed in the temples of Laos for 5 weeks. And I think that was a big part of my recovery, because I hadn't backpacked since before I'd had my children. So my children are 25 and 23. So when I'd last backpacked, I was half my age. And I was suddenly now backpacking as a solo female, thinking, gosh, I never thought this would be my life, but gosh, I'm enjoying this. I'm actually enjoying this, even though my heart was still really broken. And then I think the other part of the recovery for me was also realizing not who I am, but whose I am. So I realized I belong to, to benevolence. I belong to something much bigger than me. I don't have the answers. My whole life I've spent pushing my will force against reality to try and kind of like tease out a manifestation of what I want.
mm,
Well, what does God want? And actually, the answer in the temples was really clear, that God wanted to rescue me from a terribly dangerous relationship. Actually, it was having a toll on my soul. It was not healthy, and so it was a divine rescue that happened. It was an act of grace and the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I was being coerced away from this, which is living on purpose in a way that my soul came here to be. And I think humans are very vulnerable at this time to leaning into other people's support and advice and guidance. But actually, for me particularly, learning to trust the guidance, which actually isn't mine, but learning to submit my entire will to what that small, still voice had been probably trying to tell me my whole life. That was one. And then the second thing for me, Amy, was it's deeply personal. I write about it in the book. It was also repenting. So I've never repented really fully, where there's been times in my life where things have happened and I felt like there was a bit of friction or conflict or difficulties that I'd faced, and I would defend my position. So it was a defensive mechanism that I think I'd carried a lot, again, along with the will force energy that estrogen brings us, where we think we know. We think we know the answers, yeah? And for me, repenting to say, actually, I don't have any answers. I know, I know I've messed up. I know I've been off track at times. I know I've made mistakes, and I can still be loved anyway. Like, I can still actually be lovable. I don't have to be so ashamed of being rejected and humiliated, because actually there's nothing left to feel defensive about. It's like, I think that annihilation was a bit of an ego death that was necessary for me, for whatever reasons. Yeah, and I feel like being able to face our shame. So for me, I could have crawled. I felt like I wanted to crawl away and hide and never face the world again. I felt so humiliated by the experience of being rejected and being left for a woman 20 years younger in my year of menopause. And it's bizarre, because a reclamation for me was about just being completely honest about how I was feeling. And the whole book is about that.
Yeah. I mean, and what a beautiful thing to come through. Like, it reminds me, Lisa, it's just so good. Like, as you're speaking, I could just feel my heart like cracking open and there with you. And it's a real testament to this surrendering to the will of the divine.
Yeah.
Like, we think we know
Yeah.
what is for us.
Yes.
And then when something doesn't go to our plan, we
Yes.
straight away think, what have I done? What have I missed? How have I
Yes.
failed?
Yes.
And we jump right into that without realizing, well, hang on a minute, what if this here is the gift from the divine? I love the wisdom of Kabbalah when it talks about, the cracking and crumbling of the old vessel in
Mm,
order to create the new vessel, which is here
mm,
to hold more of the light. And it's because there's
mm,
more light coming in
mm,
whatever way you want to look at that,
mm,
love,
mm,
wisdom, abundance,
mm,
because there's more of that light incoming, the old vessel can't hold that.
mm,
That has to crumble in order for the new to come through. And it's so, so powerful.
mm.
What would you say to that version of you who was there on the floor? Like, if you could speak to her now, what would you say to her?
Yeah, I'd say to her that it's always working in our favor. It's always working in your favor. It's always, and again, I'll use the word God, because I guess I feel so grateful that um, that that higher intelligence knew better than I did what was going to be best for me. So I resigned from being this chief executive officer of the universe. I resigned from that position. I submit completely to that, that beauty, that grace that says, you are actually being seasoned for something greater. And
I
and
love that.
greater might even look like a humble life, like an ordinary life where where I think I'm living it now. I've got beautiful housemates. My 23-year-old son's just moved back home. We have this gorgeous household where, we're laughing and having cups of tea in the kitchen. It's not grandiose, but it's fulfilling and beautiful. And I'm writing again in creative ways that I wasn't when I was in my old version of myself. So yeah, I think if I could tell that version of me on the floor that this will be the making of you, which is actually, to be honest, something my sister said and I wanted to punch her.
Yeah, too soon.
It was too soon at the time. I would have absolutely probably saved myself a few months of grief, and yet at the same time, I needed to go through that fire. I really did. I know I did. It was a really, really big life lesson. That was actually what I'd like to say about that is somehow part of me knows I was always going to go through that experience, whether I tried to choose a different path or not.
Yeah.
That was always going to be part of my story. And that's another thing I think is really interesting to me is that I always thought I had control over the path ahead, but actually it was always going to turn out the way that it did. So I may as well surrender to the grace of that instead of, like, again, like you said, Amy, blaming myself for everything that ever went wrong.
We're so good at that, though, aren't we? We're like masterful at that.
We are. We are so good at that as women. And yeah, that's comforting to me. Like, I can live my next 50 years not actually having to push that will of, oh, do I have to be right or do I have to be wrong? No, I actually can be guided into that next decision. And I don't need to see 10 years ahead of me either. I can just choose today what I'm going to listen to. Yeah.
I feel like every woman needs to hear that because we
Yeah.
all have our own initiations of some point, right? And whether that's a really big one that puts you on the floor or on your knees, I know I've had those moments on my knees where there's a part of you that has to die in that moment, the part of you that has been controlling and thinking that it has the answers and thinks that it's failed, right? Our ego self.
Yes. Yes.
And even when we go through that, we can still experience another level and initiation of it. And I love that you said that you knew it's like you had a soul remembrance that this was a journey that you chose. And
Yes.
no matter what, the path was going to lead there. And I think there's something really beautiful about that as well, because we
Mm.
can take the pressure off ourselves to think that
Yes.
somehow we've made a wrong move and I should have seen this. And if only,
Yes.
like all of the mind space that we take up thinking that there's somehow that we could have avoided this.
Yes.
And what
Yes.
you're saying is there's like this inevitability of that because you know that this is what you were here for.
Correct. Absolutely correct. It's like I needed everything that's happened previously in order to fully be part of a destiny that was always laid out. And that's fascinating to me too. No one's more surprised than me that I haven't spent the rest of my days kind of curled up in bed, the crazy dog lady. I even bought a book called How to Not Die Alone, and
Oh,
just, you know, I'm never going to smile again. I'm never going to laugh again. Heartbreak at this age is something you never recover from. Well, it is, and you do.
mm. I love that. So paint the picture then for these women in their 60s and 70s that
Yeah.
have the happiest that they've ever been. For
Yes.
those that that we can aspire to with that. What
Yes.
do you think these women have let go of that creates that level of freedom? And also
Yeah.
talk about the
Yeah.
sensuality piece and sexuality piece. Because
Yes.
we all want to be having sex into our 60s, 70s, 80s. Like, what does this
Yes.
look like? Tell us.
Yes. Totally. They are quick to laugh. So I think the not taking life so seriously is a really big thing I see in my patients who are living their best lives. Of course, we can go down the bitter route and not
Yeah.
be in those eras, but the women that I know who are connecting with their girlfriends a lot and giggling a lot and talking openly about what's happening for them in their physical bodies, I think that's a really big key. It's something I've certainly got solace from myself is sharing with friends. It's nothing quite like women friends to have comfort and solidarity with. Many of them do have really beautiful, caring partners. Their husbands are really good men, and I think that is something that women get more fussy as we age. We I guess we don't tolerate bad behaviour,
Yeah.
and I think what I find so beautiful is they don't tolerate bad sex. They actually know what they like, you know. They've spent
Yeah.
years perfecting what their bodies need to be aroused, which is different for every woman.
Mm.
So that's the other thing, is that because we become more authentic, I guess, about what works for us, that's where those women have an edge, I guess, on sensuality, is that they're not beating around the bush about what their needs are in the bedroom and
They're
about what
asking
their
for what
needs
they
are.
want, right?
They're asking for what they want. They know they've trained their partners
Yeah.
well. And if they're
Yeah.
not with a partner, because there are so many women choosing single life, they are buying a vibrator or a toy and learning. You know, they come into the clinic to learn, how do I work with
Mm.
my changing body?
Mm.
What do I need to do to improve my symptoms, I guess, sexually and pelvic health wise, that might support me? And this is an area I'm so passionate about, is if you have good pelvic health, you generally can improve sexual health and vice versa.
Yeah.
So if we stop having sex because our libido turns itself down a little bit, then it can be a slippery slope to try and bring ourselves back online again, a bit like exercise.
Mm.
And I think if we see it a bit like that, where we might not feel like lifting weights or taking protein powders. We might not feel like having sex for a little while. There might be a feeling of, oh, it doesn't feel the same,
Mm.
but it is still an important part of us maintaining our health and well-being, as much as any other practice might be in menopause.
Yeah.
So that's the message I'd love to really espouse.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about in terms of their relationship to receiving, like just in general, because I
Mhm.
see this so much with women as well, and in wanting to attract new things into our lives,
Yeah.
and we haven't really been taught how to properly receive.
Mm.
We've been taught
Mm.
how to give
Yeah.
and how to give
Yes.
so much of ourselves. So can you
Yeah.
speak a little bit about that as well in terms of where that plays a role?
Yeah, look, that's a lesson I feel like I'm still learning. I think what I can see from my patients who are older and further along the mastery of life, they are finally coming along to their pelvic floor physio after saying, "Oh, I've put this off for 20 years." You know, they're receiving from healthcare providers, masseuses, um, people in service. So women are so good at giving the service, like you said, and providing for others. But these women are finally actually seeing health providers and therapists and people that actually can give
Yeah.
back to them. And I find that really beautiful, that they're being mothered. They're letting themselves be
Mm.
mothered. I feel like a mother hen with them when I've
Yeah.
got them with me in my clinic. I'm like, oh, you're finally receiving care from a therapist. This is just so fantastic. And I know for my own healing journey, to receive from therapists was also a big part of my healing this far. Yeah. I also chose to see quite a few male therapists myself, just as a way of being supported by a healthy masculine
Yeah.
scaffolding too.
Yeah.
That was important for me to reconfigure that masculine template in me that had been so wounded because I'd carried a masculine template that wasn't healthy for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Such beautiful advice. I've so loved this conversation, Lisa. I want to bring
Yes.
it back round to
Yeah.
finish on your book,
Yes.
because I want to encourage everyone. It's pre-order at the moment. I want to encourage
Pre-order.
everyone to go and grab Sexy Menopause. If every woman listening to this picked up Sexy Menopause, how do you hope that she would feel by the time she finishes that last page and closes the book?
Hopeful, liberated,
Mm.
um, nourished on a soul level, and spiritually fortified.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
feels like I haven't even read it, but it feels like a spiritual manual as well, like to be able to have something that you can relate to and that can help support you through this time, and see it as a reclamation and see it as an opportunity, and what it's giving you is just it's such a gift, Lisa. Thank you
Thank, thank,
so much. Please let us know how we can reach out to you, how people can get in
yes,
touch with you if they want to work with you, be in your world, and
yes.
obviously get the book. What's the best way?
Sexymenopause.com. You can place your pre-order there, or at any Simon and Schuster online ordering platform, or any online bookstore for that matter, will have the pre-order buttons available, including Amazon, anywhere in the world. And yes, thank you for mentioning, just on one note, about spiritual menopause. Why didn't I call the book Spiritual Menopause? Because sexual energy is spiritual energy that transforms during menopause. So, and because my work as a pelvic and sexual health educator is really focused on supporting the sexual journey, it is possibly a little unexpected that it goes into that kind of narrative, but it's much the same. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so glad you spoke to that. That's, yeah, so powerful. Thank you,
Yes.
Lisa. You are such a luminous light. And I just want to say thank you for choosing to stay with this journey and embrace this journey, even though I know your soul wouldn't have let you do anything else, because it's so clearly what you're meant to be doing here. So thank you for saying yes to that and just being such a light beam in this world.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been such a delight to speak to you, Amy.
Yeah, I loved it. Thanks, lovely. Thank you.